tend to be good recently. Well, no, it's great, but I tend to be a little bit scattered from time to time.
All right, guys. You may have caught the end of a conversation that I'm sure we'll have at some point in this conversation. But I have to say real quick, before introducing this gentleman of an author that we all know his name, I'm just very thankful to have you on this channel. I told my wife when I first started my YouTube channel, I said, I want my goal is to interview Ryan Cahill, and we're here today. So I just want to thank you. And ladies and gentlemen, indie author Ryan Cahill, how are you today, my friend?
Okay. Your voice is repeating in my head about 12 times right now. And I am like, we're talking about me being scattered. Oh my God, I don't have a clue what is going on.
Do you have YouTube playing at the same time?
I didn't think I did, but apparently I do.
It sounds like it. Yeah. If you shut that YouTube off, we should be aces to go.
No, I know what happened. I opened it on Twitter by accident. So I didn't have YouTube open, but I'm just sitting there stunned. Anyone watching me is just like glassy-eyed going, okay, which one of you do I respond to?
I thought that I may have talked in a different language for a second, but that makes total sense. I was just introducing you and thanking you for being here. And yeah.
No,
in the author Ryan Cahill.
And yeah, hi. And yeah, thank you so much for having me. And I'm so God damn it. I have it like I'm really fidgety. And I always I turn my wedding ring on my hand all the time, and sometimes it catches a hair, and that's what happened right there. As you can tell, I'm a little bit scattered right now. But yeah, sorry it took so much effort to get me on here. I've been so bad with replying to anyone and anything in basically this whole year.
So I told my wife that you said that. I told my wife that you said that in a message to me. And what better what's the word? I guess realization that somebody wants to speak with you, that they just continue to reach out to you. And when it happens, it happens.
It's amazing. And the fact that you were messaging different somewhere, I was okay, I gotta respond to this, and I gotta respond. And then, I'm kind of like a squirrel crossed with a magpie. If something shiny comes past me, I just turn and run that way. So that tends
it's not like I was the only person in your inbox wanting to do an interview with you. So that's just part of the thing. It's just how it goes. And all that matters is that you're here right now, and I get to borrow your time for a little bit. So how's the weather in New Zealand right now? Ladies and gentlemen, if you didn't know, he's in New Zealand, and they're a whole day ahead of us. Like here, it's the 31st. He's already lived for that day. It's the first there.
You guys haven't had Halloween yet. Yeah, no. It's already been and gone, and it's now 2:00 the next day.
Yeah, way ahead of our time.
Which is strange.
Dude, that was
probably good. It's been raining like tropical storm raining all week, but now it's pretty decent, and I have a beach volleyball. No, I keep saying volleyball. Beach Ultimate Frisbee League to play in tomorrow, which would be really cool.
So Ultimate Frisbee, what does that entail?
It's like American football without the contact. Replace the football with the Frisbee.
Okay. See, now me,
so I would get 2 teams, 2 end zones. And you can't run once you've caught the ball. So you're throwing the Frisbee and then you sprint to try and catch it. It's really, really fun.
It sounds fun.
It is.
I played American football. Now, you grew up in the UK, right?
Ireland.
I'm so sorry for that. Yeah, so I know it wasn't New Zealand.
No.
And I guess my brain was just like the UK. So that's awesome because I haven't talked to anybody from Ireland. And anybody who watches my channel, it's like the most fascinating thing to me usually isn't the books. Not that that's not what's inspired me to get us here. It's the culture and just learning how we're different, but all the same. So yeah, just finding out even just about the Frisbee thing. I want to do Frisbee golf. Have you done Frisbee golf?
I've played it. Yeah. A very different sport. And even the Frisbees are different. So in Frisbee golf or disc golf, as they call it over here, it's like these small, compact, heavy discs. And then in Ultimate Frisbee, it's more like the Frisbees that you're used to, but a bit more weighted, and they can travel serious distances and get a lot of curve. Whereas the disc golf discs tend to be way, way heavier and go a lot straighter.
I'm going to get to a couple of comments real quick because I'm just so good at that. It never confuses me. John, I like this. He says, Ryan, may your writing hand never waver. Your ideas never run dry. Your sales never dip, and may your enemies do all three. I think that's an inspirational quote, if I've ever heard
That
one.
is an inspirational quote, and I'm pretty sure it is definitely taken the rhythm from "May Your Blades Never Dull." Yeah. Okay. Cool.
He's talking on you, John.
Hey, John.
Book Mama says, "Eek, I'm pumped. Look at that." Ian Montague says, "Hello, happy Halloween, one and all." Search through here. Thank you for showing up, Timothy Wolf, my man, another indie author.
Fun fact. You might or might not know that Halloween comes from Ireland.
Let's hear about it. Do you know more than that?
Yeah, so Halloween comes from the ancient Irish festival of Ihasauna, which is All Hallows Eve. Essentially, it's the Day of the Dead, and that's actually where Halloween as an entire concept comes from.
I love that. Those are things that I want to like at Thanksgiving dinner. I'm like, hey, you guys know this, right? And of course, I know nobody does, and that just gives me the chance to tout about it because, my favorite character from The Big Bang Theory was Sheldon for that reason. He just knows everything about everything. And it's always inspired me to kind of like learn those little things. I don't know. It's just fun to know what you're talking about when you talk about it, right? So for anybody here that's unfamiliar with the series you're writing in its reading order, because that's the first question I had when I first started reading.
Yeah.
Would you go over some the reading orders?
Yeah. Well, like the reality is there's loads of different ways to read it, which is just going to get me in trouble when I say it. But the general idea is you kind of have to start off, in my opinion, with either The Fall or Blood and Fire. And I know some people have said, "Oh, hey, we can now start with The Ice." And I was like,
"Oh, really?"
Yeah, well, because chronologically it's first, and not first, but it's before A Blood and Fire.
But I tend to trust what you say when you put it out. That's just me.
Yeah, well, usually publishing order is the best way to read most series. And after the first book, that's kind of how I do it for my series, because there are reveals and things done in certain ways that if you read it in a different order, it won't ruin them, but they'll have very, very different impacts. So the intended impact would be publishing order, but then that kind of varies, because I think A Blood and Fire and The Fall can definitely be interchangeable, because The Fall was written that way on purpose.
That was my first read, and I'm so glad I read it that way, because I've read The Fall, of Blood and Fire, and I'm into Of Darkness and Light. And wow, just to, like, the word that comes to mind when I closed the last page of Blood and Fire is just like, that was such an adventure. Adventure being the main thing. When I'm promised like people that are going to travel and hit a tavern, that just makes me feel so cozy inside.
It's a funny one, because I think if someone tells me that they've read A Blood and Fire and they've read The Fall and they love them, I can kind of really confidently say, okay, I have you now. Because I would consider A Blood and Fire, I think a lot of people would, to be by far the weakest in the whole series, because it's the first book I ever wrote. So it's the first anything I ever wrote. So
how dare you tell like that?
But it's like, I, like anyone who does anything, I did it more and I got better at it. At least I hope I got better at it. I feel I got better at it. So for me, as I move on, the writing gets a lot stronger. So if someone says they love The Blood and Fire, I'm like, okay, yes. That's the benefit of having a weaker first book.
Now, hearing you say that, I have to say, because I'm part of your Discord, and I have my own Discord, so I hear lots of different opinions. And I have to say 99.5 of them are 100% just wonderful and positive. I honestly can't relate to anything negative, which is rare. You know, there's nobody feuding over characters or, no, this is better. It's been like a unified.
There's definitely feuding over characters in my Discord. That is,
maybe it's not, because,
but in a good way. Okay. Like, I think if you don't evoke strong responses, it's a bad thing. Like, the characters aren't written to just be universally loved, but they are written to be universally kind of like understood and related to. So I don't care if someone hates a character, as long as they understand why they hate the character. But like even with the stories, like there's always going to be things you can improve on. I'd be naive. I think any author would be naive to think that they have everything nailed down.
I want to say, one of my favorite
Oh, hi,
people,
Phil.
yeah, ever is Philip Chase, and he's here chatting away. And usually he tells me, "Look, guys, it's 8 o'clock. I'm going to bed." He has stayed up for you.
No, Phil's a lovely guy. I had a call with Phil a while ago now, just before he released the trilogy, which seems to be
Mm.
going really well. So that's great.
Oh, yeah, yes. I've seen some recent cool stuff that I can't wait to talk with him about. But yes, just hugely popular anymore. The Dan trilogy. Excuse me. Just some other people who are in here. My buddy Brian Wilson, another indie author. He wrote The Forbidden Planet, The Forsaken Planet. Sorry, The Forsaken Planet. Those two are a little interchangeable, I guess.
Oh man, the amount of people I know and I've known a long time who will say, "Oh, look at this book of Fire and Blood," and I'm like,
Yes,
"We
but it's
both know
easy
what
to
you're going
do.
to realize in 10 seconds." And it's like, "Oh crap, I got that wrong, didn't I?"
But just also realize, like as a reviewer, you see so many titles, and some of them, not all of them, in fact, most of them aren't like this, but some of them, you're like, hold on, don't I have another book that's named that? And it's usually, obviously, not the same, but it's similar. Your brain just kind of does that scrambled thing.
Oh yeah,
Um,
100%.
so I like that Josh Walker said, "Hey, Dr. Fantasy," because I mean, you say Dr. Fantasy, we know who that is. That's the gentleman of fantasy booktube, Philip Chase himself, right? So you started writing The Bound and the Broken. Which novel or novella, or if you
Yep.
want to iterate your favorite novel and novella, which one was most exciting to write?
I think it kind of all depends on what kind of exciting, which I know is a bit of a cop out answer, but like A Blood and Fire was my first book, so
Hmm.
that was so exciting to write. Um, but then I think when I finished, I think as I've gone, each one has been more and more exciting, but
Mm.
also in general more and more challenging. I think A Blood and Fire was the easiest to write by a long distance, just because I had no preconception of what I needed to do, and I had no expectations and nothing else like that. But I think like Of War and Ruin was incredibly fun to write at points, and then also some of the like probably the most stressful periods of my entire life. Like very much so. I think it's one of those where I think a lot of people they want to become authors, or in the same way that people kind of go with anything, with any kind of creative field, or you always have this dream job you want to do. And then people a lot of the time don't quite understand that when it becomes your job, it's very hard for it to remain a passion,
Ooh,
because when it puts food on the table and pays your mortgage, it takes on a level of stress that shouldn't really be associated with the things you love naturally.
wow.
So it is hard. Like there's yeah, it's amazing, but my God, is it stressful.
Wow. I kind of was talking to my wife a little bit about that earlier. Like, you know, basically exactly what you said. Like at first it's this ambition that you're very passionate about, and not that you lose that. And you obviously through your books just continuing success. But it's nice to know the insight from somebody who started without the success and has gained it, and in trying to continue that success isn't always um, fun,
But
you know?
it's one of those where someone I heard a while ago, and someone said, the old adage that if you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life,
Yeah.
which is completely untrue. You will work it every single day for the rest of your life. But the
Yeah.
difference is, you know, I would never, ever, ever, now that I have this, I could not imagine going back to a normal job. But I've also never dealt with so much stress.
Hmm.
So now I work 24/7.
But what does
And
that
when
stress
I'm
tell you about the fact that you want to continue doing that job? It must be pretty deep in your heart.
But that's what I mean. I couldn't ever imagine going back to what I used to do, because I used to work as a biochemist, and I couldn't ever imagine going back to that.
Hmm.
But I never worked the hours in that job that I do in this job. When I was writing Of War and Ruin, I was working 18 hours a day.
Which is
Like
a
I
brick of a
was
book.
like it was insane. I had 6 hours outside of writing and work, and that was 4 to 5 hours of sleep, an hour or so of gym, and then this, and that was it. All like for a year straight, and it
That's
was intense.
well, yeah, intense definitely comes to mind, but uh, the word is evading me at the moment. But very structured, uh, headstrong. Uh,
It's kind of almost, it's one of those where to keep it's hard, because I think a lot of people when they write, they're kind of like, oh, I want to, wait for the muse to hit and do this and do that. But I had timelines and deadlines I needed to hit. So, I just had to force myself. It was more like just not motivation, but just dedication. Just like sit there and just like bang your. If you're having a bad day, it doesn't matter.
Fuck
You're
it.
gonna have
Yeah.
a bad day, and you're gonna spend 18 hours to get the same amount of words you got written in 6 hours yesterday. And
I think so many people need to hear what you're saying right now. I'm so glad you covered that.
but I also wouldn't advise a lot of people to do it because there was 4 or 5 times over the course of that year where I was in a bad place. I got serious burnout. Amy would come into me and she'd my wife, and she'd just be like, what is going on? I was like, I just feel empty. And you just have to
Wow.
go. But it just happens because when you're doing it 7 days a week, there is no break. And
Yeah.
the way I have it structured out, I have a whole spreadsheet for my words. So I know how many words I need to write every single day to meet my deadline. So any day I don't hit that words, the word count for the rest of the days increases.
Ooh.
So that's pressure, because if you miss a day, if I miss 2,000 words on a day, those 2,000 words get added to the rest of the days.
As
And
many
it's-
words.
yeah.
How many words was of War and Ruin?
437,000.
Oh my God. So
Yeah, it was a big
if
book.
if you gave me that schedule and was like, hey, look, work at the schedule that you did. I mean, I like what Book Mama 87 says. She says dedication. I think that sums it up. And anybody who's read your work, it's not this I don't know how to explain it. It's fun. It took time to think of a fun way to write. I don't know. You put your time in, and that's just evident, especially at the rate that you're putting out, like quality books, big books. Me, I'm a sucker for big books. I was joking with Mike from Mike's book reviews. I said I have to make sure there's a stud in the wall for Ryan's bookshelf, because that bad boy needs to make sure it's anchored.
Well, what you're going to do is, so I'm putting shelves up behind me here.
Mhm.
And so what I've decided to do is I have solid macrocarpa, but I would probably get a hardwood. And I'm going to go and I'm going to cut threaded rod into sections. And then I'm going to drill the threaded rod directly into the studs.
Oh, wow.
And then I'm going to slide the shelf onto the threaded rod. So it should be able to hold about 150, 160 kilos.
Yeah, that sounds about right, if not more. Me, I throw a molly in the bad boy and trust it, until it falls. But I do build my own bookshelves. I do. So, I enjoy it. Now you're building your own, right? And that's what
it's going to be floating shelves. That's why I need
floating.
the threaded rod, because there's nothing else to
is.
support it. Yeah.
If you watch my lives, I'm like, sometimes I'm looking up here. That's not me like losing my concentration or kind of like my sanity. It's me looking for a book or like, something to grab. They're right in front of me, which is fun because it's kind of like a reminder of why I'm here. And I just love doing it. I like to talk to you guys. It's the knowledge that you guys have is something that I want to use in my own writing adventures. And I've gotten some amazing inspirations, which just continued with today. I'm really excited you're here. So what about, so I don't know if did you answer which one was most exciting?
Kind of. I kind of gave a 50-50. I gave a politician's answer because it depends. It depends, like I said, it depends on what kind of exciting we're looking at. Like Blood and Fire was exciting because it was my first book. War and Ruin was exciting because I was, getting to my third book. And I don't know, every time it's a different type of excitement. So it's a very hard, at least I find it a hard question to answer.
No, I definitely understand it. Now, as far as like novellas, was the fall, that had to be pretty exciting. That was your first novella. You offer it free on your website with signing up for your mailing list. It's excellent. It's what got me into reading more. And the fun thing is you don't have to read it, but I highly suggest it. It got me into reading more of your books. It did. That was the one thing it did.
I kind of have them as, you don't have to read them, the novellas, but you kind of do. So to understand the plot, you don't have to read them. And I wanted to have it that way so that, because otherwise I'd get so many reviews, people saying this doesn't make any sense. Oh, that's maybe a bit dramatic. I would think 150 kgs is a few more. I think a War and Ruin is 1.6 kgs, which is quite heavy for a book. So we get a few of them on the shelf.
Yeah.
About 75, give or take.
Right.
Maybe 80.
No,
but
that's
yeah,
really
I kind of
cool.
have Yeah, I kind of want it that anyone who does read them, it just adds a huge amount of depth to the world, and there's a lot more to gain from the next books when you read the novellas. So I've tried as hard as I can to make them a staple part of the series so that most people will go to them as well.
You touched on a point earlier that I forgot because that's just what I do is forget shit. But of Blood and Fire, how it's the kind of the weakest part of that makes me so happy. You have no idea. It just gets better, and it's like that's not the first time I've heard that. In fact, that's kind of a saying that goes around when talking about your books, and just excitement. That's what I feel. So, and I agree. I've heard this also a few times today. Joshua Bailey says, best author website I've seen, honestly. You have a pretty badass way. You keep everybody in the know. How do you stay up on a website like that?
It's one of those things. Just when I started writing, it was one of the things that I learned, and I've been like building it for the whole time, constantly changing it, moving stuff around, and there's 100 ways it could be better, but I'm happy with it. I'm very happy with it. But my God, websites are a pain in the ass.
So yeah, I do websites myself, but like I'm definitely one that isn't an expert by any means. I do decent websites, but nothing like who done yours. Yours is an expert. He's done his thing. She's done whoever done it.
Mine is me.
Oh, you've done it.
I've never done them before. That's why I'm not an expert. And it was just hours and hours and hours and hours. Before I launched the book, people kind of always said, how did you prepare for launching the book? And I took like a solid 6 months and just learned how to do things. Because there's small stuff I didn't want to have to go back to someone for. I didn't want to have to say, hey, I need to tweak a page. Can I pay you another $500? Like, I just wanted to go and learn and get it done. And then I knew it can look shit now. And then I'll make it a little bit less shit. And then a little bit less shit. And as time goes on, I will hopefully reduce the shittiness to a point that it's good.
Wow, that should be in a book. 100%. Yeah, that's the process. When you think about
the art of shittiness reduction.
Oh, that's it right there.
Yeah.
Write it. I'll read it. Yeah. I promise. I like that because what that does, what I hear a lot is as an indie author, I didn't know how many jobs came with being an indie author. And taking on some of those jobs yourself can reduce the pocketbook.
Oh man.
Do you agree or?
Oh yeah, but like it's.
I see opinions stirring over here.
Oh no, it's no opinions. Like you're right, you're totally right. Like, but I do basically everything except for the book covers myself. Actually, I do the novella covers. So I only do the novella covers because I've spent so long doing the graphic stuff. But I don't trust myself to do the main covers. I don't want to trust myself to do the main covers. So I have Stuart Bache who does the main covers. But everything else, all my formatting, everything, is all me.
That's incredible.
It's incredibly time intensive. I wish I was the kind of person who could take my book and just throw it to a formatter and get it back later on. But instead, I spend like 2 weeks formatting each book, and I want to bang my head off a wall. But it means that as I do it, I get better at it. And as I learn more about it, then I can do more with it. And,
I love books. I love reading. And so far, I love writing. I don't know how good I am yet, but I like doing it, which is, I think, the precursor to getting better. But I do think that if I was to format pages all day and stare at a book and like the margins and all that fun stuff, I may want to bang my head.
I'll tell you one thing. You will never know a pain like going through a 437,000 word book and trying to get rid of hyphens on the side.
Oh, God. Oh, hyphens on the side. Yeah. Like these ones that kind of float over.
Yeah, because you need them. You need them because in order to create like non-variable gaps between words, so it actually looks consistent, hyphens need to happen. But then it just looks messy if you have 9 on the side of one page. So you have to go through and adjust like the kerning between letters and stuff. And it's, it's
when attention to detail is 100% beneficial, but like daunting.
Yeah. I'm finally at a stage now that I'm probably going to outsource the formatting, but I've now learned how to use InDesign and how to format with everything else, so that when someone else does it for me, I know what I'm looking at. And then if I get the InDesign files, I can tweak things like spellings. So I outsource the bulk pain, and then I take a little pain.
So I like that. You learned it, you did it. And then by eventually hiring somebody, you know if they've done a good job or bad job.
Yeah, well, it's the idea that you can have someone who does DIY. Okay, you do DIY in your home, and there's some people who do shit they just should not do. Okay,
Oh, it's all over the internet.
You just shouldn't do. Okay, but in general, you can become very, very good at DIY. All right, and you can do loads of other stuff, but then you kind of weigh up what is your time worth versus what is the time of a contractor worth. And when you get to that stage, if you've done enough, you can't get bullshitted by the contractor who comes in. Which is the key part, because I'm spending money on them because it makes more sense mathematically for me to hire them to do it than for me to take time away from my job to do it. But now I know what they're doing. Now I know how it works and how it functions, and I know that if they come in and tell me it's going to cost $3,000, I'll say, you're talking shit. This is a $1,500 job, and I know.
You know who you're talking with?
Yeah, so I think
you know who you're talking to, right? I'm right.
I don't think I'd ever say that sentence out loud to anyone ever.
No, I respect
that. But no, I think it's more. I don't know. It's like the old adage, like knowledge is power, and it really is. Like once you understand how to do something, it's easier to outsource it. In my opinion,
I love that, because you're giving people a reason to gain knowledge, which is the reason I started this YouTube channel first. Is I need knowledge. I want knowledge. I want my appetite for knowledge to never be full. I want that to always be something I strive for.
I was looking down, and I saw Philip Chase put another comment where he said Vellum was a huge help for me formatting. Otherwise, I would have been in trouble. And so I do use Vellum now for formatting ebooks, but I am way, way, way too much of a control freak on the books to use Vellum for my physical books, because you have no control over things like what's horribly called widows and orphans, which is, when there's a single word dangling on the next page from the previous page, or when there's like the hyphens on the side, you have no control over that. And that actually causes me to have like crushing anxiety. So I need to do that in InDesign by hand. And I think it's not customizable enough. It's a formatting software. It's just not customizable enough for me for physical books, but I use it for my ebooks now. But before I had a Mac, I had to learn how to use HTML to code the ebooks, which was not fun.
It's a lot of things that are smushed together that make no sense. And I mean, you have to learn these things. It's like the definition of you'll know absolutely nothing until I teach you how to understand it. So Vellum, just to reiterate, is a editing software?
No, Vellum it's a Mac only software that's used for formatting books. It's incredible for formatting ebooks. Real quick, always kind of like a reproducible result. Really, really kind of crisp and pristine. But it is very, very limited in its customizations, which I don't mind for ebooks, but I despise for print books.
That's a good bit of information. That's something I've never heard of Vellum. And so people who take this seriously that they want to do, it's nice to know those little tidbits of information. That's gold. Let's see here. We've got Joshua Walker. He says, I've been fiddling with Vellum and ultimately settling on Atticus just for the customization options. But in terms of user friendliness, Vellum wins hands down for sure.
Yeah, I've used Atticus as well before I got a Mac, and I did really like it. But the big difference between Vellum and Atticus is that Vellum is just a polished, brilliant product that will reproducibly give you what you want every time. Atticus is very, very good, but it's still in its kind of developmental phase. And so when I was using it, the problem was I couldn't trust it. So what came out was great, but then you'd find out that there was a patch in the software and all of your curly brackets turned into straight brackets. Or there was just pieces that just got deleted. And that was happening to me. And I couldn't afford to put a book out with like 10,000 pre-orders and have all of those people get a faulty product.
Wow. So that's such insight.
Yeah. So I think Atticus will get there. The team are really good. Really, really good. Great customer support. And they will get there. And they're probably a lot further on now because I haven't used it in about a year. And they were developing very, very fast, but it just wasn't, for what I was producing, it wasn't reliable enough. But
Yeah, to talk about some aspects of the writing process, modern writing process and publishing process that you just don't hear about very often. So it's nice to hear those little bit of tidbits. You know, you've got somebody on the cusp of doing what you're speaking about. That's gold. So thank you for bringing that up.
No, of course.
That's literally why I'm here. Stuff like that. Let's check over here in the chats. I'm sure there's a bunch of stuff I missed. I'm sorry, guys. Let's see. Book Mama says, MySpace was why I learned HTML. I'm sure we all remember MySpace. I was determined to have the coolest profile. Yeah, I remember those days. Oh my gosh. My guy's here. Hey, I can honestly tell you, go read books. Top fan. That's your guy. Top fan.
Oh no, I've seen him all the time on Twitter.
So you have.
Really nice guy. Yeah.
I just wanted to tout about him. That's my guy. I'm currently reading of War and Ruin and enjoying the heck out of it. The Bound and the Broken is a special series.
Oh, thank you.
He has this video speaking of your series, and I believe his phrase was, "It just has no business being this good." And I thought that was just the best way to put it. It has no business being this good, but it is. The pinnacle of social media was when someone clicked on your MySpace, immediately heard crawling. Yeah. Good times. Middle school for me. So I know you've probably gotten this question a million times, but I'm still going to ask it because I love to hear it. What was your inspiration behind writing the series, The Bound and the Broken?
I suppose I didn't really have an inspiration behind writing it. Like it depends. Like I've been inspired by loads of books and authors and series across the years that I love, but just for writing it, I can't think of a single inspiration. It was just, I wanted to have this story kind of in my head, like a general world that I always kind of dreamt back to. I kind of said, one year I was hired into a job that didn't need me yet. They hired me in advance. I was working in microbiology at the time, and they hired me in advance of needing me, and they had no work for me, and they wouldn't give me work. So I think I spent like a month or so watching a few different seasons of Netflix shows. In work, because they wouldn't give me work. I'd email and say like, "Hey, look, what can I do? I'm just sitting here." And they're like, "Yeah, well, you're earning your money, so stop complaining." Wow. And eventually I said, "Fuck it, I'm going to write a book."
I love it. That's what I'm going to take from this whole interview right there. Fuck it, I'm going to write a book.
Yeah, but that is genuinely how it started, and it kind of just went from there. So there wasn't like a single thing where, oh yeah, it's going to inspire me to do this. But like if I was to think of a single series, like The Faithful and the Fallen by John Gwynne is a series that I think it's one of the first series that brought me fully back into reading as an adult, because when I was studying in university, I didn't read for pleasure for like 4 years, because it was all just really heavy, like biochemistry and stuff. And eventually I got into The Faithful and the Fallen, and it just, that got it for me. That was like, this is everything I love.
So real quick before I get into the next question, because that's a great one. That's a human answer, which you gave. It's not always just like, I know exactly what I'm going to do and I'm going to be successful at it. And it doesn't always happen that way.
I switched careers at 28, like full careers. Went from, I was working in an oncology area in biochemistry, and then fully switched to this. So I think anyone who thinks they need to know what they're going to do for the rest of their life at any age, has been told wrong.
I found fantasy at 29, but I love that message, because you were doing important work, but something obviously spoke to you to do what you're doing now, and I love that. That's a great story, and I think that a lot of people can relate with that. What was it?
I just said go team.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So Nick Horvath has a great book coming out actually today here in the US, called Sledge versus Labyrinth. It is awesome. I could talk all day about his book. Do you record and master your own audiobooks, Ryan?
Oh, sweet Jesus, no. I am like hybrid published with Podium Audio, who have the rights for the audiobooks. So they got the narrator Derek Perkins, who is a fantastic narrator who narrated Homo Deus and Sapiens and a few other like really big books, which was great. Geez, no, I don't even know where I'd find the hours in the day.
Yeah, you sound like a very busy man. But
even in general, I would normally say I actually had a conversation with Justin Lee Anderson about this at FantasyCon, and I was saying how if a big trad author said, "I'm going to narrate my own books," right, and that happened, that would be an amazing marketing. You know, it'd be so cool for the publishing house if an indie author cheaping out with low production quality and not bothering to pay for a narrator. And that is the perception, and it's totally fine because I can also see where that perception will come from. I think it'd be naive to think it's anything other than that. That's what it would be perceived as. And if your recording equipment isn't on par with full studios, and if your narration isn't on par with the top-notch narrator, it will be burned in hell. Like, that's what's going to happen. I think what you've got to understand when you're releasing a book indie is that a lot of the time, from a quality standard, you will be held to a higher standard than traditional publishing. Wow. A trad author will not receive comments, well, probably not receive comments, I'm sure some do, in their emails about typos in their book. That won't happen. All right, not normally. But like if you get anything wrong as an indie author, because I think there's a huge support for the indie community out there, but then there's also people who are waiting to point out reasons as to why it's less. So one of the big things for me is just ensuring that it is completely indistinguishable from anything trad. And I'm kind of really picky with stuff. And even mine, so like we have a War and Ruin. I went through a team of 20 beta readers. It had a professional copy edit, a professional proofread, about 300 ARC readers went over the book. And there are still going to be typos in it because it's 437,000 words. But it's just about trying to make sure that the quality is and professionalism is on par with anything you'll see, because that's what really helps it stand out for me anyway.
I know a lot of people that I talk to, authors, that are dangling on what you just answered. And me, not being an author, sometimes I get asked if like, that is experience, what you just talked about. You learned that through experience. I've said it a million times already, but that's gold. I mean, there's so many indie authors that are like, should I do my own audiobook? Is that going to get me ahead? And what you're saying is realistically, you're going to be held to a higher standard because of this and this and this.
And it's going to be a lot of the time. It's obviously, there's, like I said, there's huge amounts of people who have a huge support for the indie community and won't think like that. But in general, you got to think from a psychology perspective. Is the way it looks. It's cool and quirky to have a trad author narrate their own audiobook for Penguin Random House or for Tor or for something like that, or HarperCollins, but it will look like an indie author trying to cut corners. And unless, and that's even without people listening. People won't listen. They'll just see it and go, oh, okay. And then if they do listen and it's brilliant premium quality, then you might hit a niche that no one else was able to get there. That could be amazing for you. But just understand when someone goes to do it that there's a risk.
There's a realistic part of the business, and there's also possibilities. But let's understand the realistic part. I like what Philip said.
The typos. Yeah, I was laughing at that.
Little gremlins that reproduce when you're not looking.
But it's like on a bigger one for me. One of the most important things is covers, and I see it can be really hard because I see a lot of indie authors who might post their covers and say, oh, what does everyone think? And they usually won't get, this is where I don't usually believe in when people say toxic positivity. I think positivity is great, okay? Mm-hmm. But there is a point when it becomes toxic, and the point where it becomes toxic is if somebody, say for instance, posts a cover that might not be as professional as it should be, never mind good or bad, just maybe there's something wrong, most people won't point it out. It'll be left and they'll only get positive comments, because you don't usually see the negative comments underneath it, and that can lead to its own thing. But one of the biggest pieces of advice I'd ever give that was massive for me is if you're not sure about your cover, or
issues
Oh, you're
here.
all good.
I'm sorry.
No stress.
Anyway, continue. I'm sorry. If can you guys see me? If not, I'll fix it very soon.
No, it's all good. But it's just yeah, if you're ever unsure about your cover or what you're going to do with your cover or whether it kind of stands up to you, the cover is the easiest and quickest thing to do is to take images of all of the top selling books in your genre and in your categories in Amazon where you're going, and just put them all onto like a Word document or onto whatever software you have and stick your cover next to them. And you're not looking for whether your cover is as beautiful from an art perspective. You're not looking at whether your cover is like stunning and artistically incredible. What you're looking for is it as crisp and professional as the other covers? And that's the thing for me that people don't look at is, does this look like it was put together by a top industry professional? Even if you did it yourself, the only problem with people doing it themselves is most of the time they're just not good enough. But if you are good enough and you do it yourself and it looks indistinguishable, that's the main thing. The professionalism and the crispness and it fitting into the genre is more important than just having a beautiful piece of art. There's a lot of indie authors that I know who have gotten, or I've seen who've gotten they put serious investment in, got like $2,000 covers from amazing illustrators, and they're beautiful works of art, but then they don't think about the typography and they just go and slap the typography on themselves. And you take a beautiful piece of art that then looks like a bad book cover because the typography, there are cover designers for a reason. It's a whole job field for a reason. And that's one of the things I'd always say to do for people. And I did it when I was trying to get my covers right and I was going through different iterations of what I wanted until I eventually settled on the ones that I had because they fit in with the kind of iconography design I wanted to go with.
So leave it up to my computer to crap out on me momentarily when I'm interviewing Ryan here. But hey, we're back. Thank you for that. So the information that is so key to people, especially we read, we know what books are, we think we know what goes into it, but what usually baffles people is those little tidbits that you're talking about. And I think that it's so highly specifies that it takes a lot of experience to have the knowledge to give it, any sort of advice on it. It shows that you've been through these little things. You've gotten better at them over time. And it's just cool to hear because you're always looking for those pieces of information that you don't hear repeated because it's just not as realistic, I guess, maybe in my head.
It's the small details that you don't see. It's even when you're starting to do it, it's the small things that kind of bring stuff together that you only really learn by either being told specifically by someone or by making a mistake. You make a mistake and you learn that, and then you move forward, or I think I can't remember if I saw this before or if I thought of it from my book. I probably saw it before, but it's the idea that wise men learn from their mistakes, but geniuses learn from the mistakes of others. Ooh. And so it's the idea of learning from your mistakes, but then when you see someone else do it, also take note of that and put it down and go, hold on, don't do this.
It makes a lot of sense.
It's really straightforward stuff, but I just don't think, we always think that way.
I think thinking in period, I think is something we strive to make more complex when a lot of the times it's just kind of breaking it down to its most essential parts. At least in what I've discovered. It's usually like you thought way too hard about this and you should have just went with what you originally had or your original thoughts. So I thought of this question earlier and I thought it'd be really fun to hear the answer to. So you released Of Blood and Fire and you're excited. How long after the release of Blood and Fire did you realize it was kind of taken off or realize it was something special or well received?
Well, it's kind of weird because it was kind of a slow one in that, say I released it in March and then so I technically went full-time by May, but that wasn't because I was earning the money to go full-time. I was moving in July to New Zealand with Amy. And so I had to quit my job because we were leaving. So, it wasn't earning enough to go full-time by then. And it was slowly ticking along, and it was doing okay. You know, I had little benchmarks that I wanted to try and hit a certain amount of reviews. Like I think everyone does. I was like, oh, if I can get 10, that'd be amazing. If I can get 50, that would be
Wow.
unbelievable.
Awesome.
And then I was kind of trying to dabble in some ads, and I was kind of going, I don't have an amount I want to earn. I want to have an amount I don't want to lose. So I set like loss limits. So like, don't lose more than $100 in March, trying to advertise the book and that sort of stuff. Surviving off the money that I put aside. And then we moved over to New Zealand, and we got there, and 6 days in, we had 2 weeks of isolation when you got into New Zealand, that you have to go into like hotel quarantine.
Because of COVID?
Yeah. So
Okay.
we flew in the middle of COVID, right? And then 6 days later, New Zealand went into its first full lockdown
Wow.
across the country for 6 months. So then I couldn't look for a new job because I literally couldn't go and look for one.
You just couldn't look for one.
So we stayed with Amy's parents, and I kept writing. And then by New Year's Eve that year, so yeah, like just later on down the year, I released Of Darkness and Light. And Of Darkness and Light was when it kind of took off. When Of Darkness and Light came out, from then on, I was earning enough to go full time. And that was that was a one moment switch.
Wow. How did that feel like in the moment? What were you thinking? Like, uh-oh, or hell yeah. What was it like?
I was currently, when it happened, I was on a beach in New Zealand with a bottle of champagne celebrating New Year's.
All right.
And that was really cool. That was like the coolest place you could ever celebrate a book launch.
That is amazing. I'm going to take your word on it because it sounds amazing.
It was cool.
So you just added to what you were already celebrating, but like 25 million times fold.
Yeah, it was pretty cool.
That's awesome. So I want to I relate a little bit to what you said about you were having a tough time finding a job. You guys were at Amy's parents, right? You're writing. You're doing what you think is the right thing. What was your thought process then? Like, what kept you going, even though things weren't necessarily going the way you wanted them to eventually go?
Wait, at which point do you mean?
So it's not taken off yet. You're not. Of Darkness and Light hasn't taken off. You're at Amy's parents' house and you're writing. What's keeping you going?
Well, at that point, there wasn't really that much pressure.
Okay.
Like it's the easy answer. At that point, I'd released The Blood and Fire. It was going well. Like it was going well, not like taking off through the roof. But it was going really well. I couldn't have complained at all. It was doing far better than I thought it was going to do. And I couldn't go and look for another job anyway. And I was like, I'm having fun writing, and I'm going to keep writing. And that was it, really. I think it's different if some people are faced in much harder positions where they have kids at the time and they have no other work at the time. And if they don't release this book, then they won't be able to pay their mortgage. And that makes things a lot harder. But at that point, because we were living with Amy's parents, we just moved country and we didn't have anything that was pushing us anywhere. I was kind of able to just be a bit more free was what I was doing.
So kind of the opposite of, in my mind, what was going on. In my head, like maybe things were a little more stressful, but on the contrary, things may be a little more comfortable because you're waiting for everything to kind of smooth out.
Yeah, and it was tough, but at this point now, there's a lot more stress because now I'm coming on to what will be the 7th book in the series, including novellas, and now it does pay for everything. Now it does pay for the mortgage. It does pay for my food. You know, if we want to have kids written down the line, like then, you know, it's going to have to pay for that too. So I can't afford for it to take too long. I can't afford to mess up. Whereas I think when I was coming into Of Darkness and Light, between Of Blood and Fire and Of Darkness and Light was probably the perfect storm of having very little stress over my head, very little expectation, and also being kind of quite free in what I wanted to do. And whereas now things are a lot more kind of, you know, overbearing and dependent on what I'm doing.
I like the fact that you covered like the yin and the yang. It's like both sides of this equation. There's pros and there's cons of both. You just kind of have to do your research and kind of know what you're getting into. And you've given really good insight about that. I appreciate that. How many installments, do you have like a set number as far as installments you plan to have in the Bound and the Broken series?
Yeah, and this one, it's meant to be 5 main books and 4 novellas, probably a few short stories. but I will be writing more in the world, but just not in this story. Because
That was literally the answer I was going for.
I don't like the never-ending story thing. I think this is a story arc, and I want to tell it, and I want to. It's done. But I will be going back to different time points in the world at different places, telling different stories entirely, with different things going on. And that's kind of been a plan for a long time.
So where did your love of dragons come? Because I know this just because I've watched pretty much every interview you've ever done, and by reading your books, there's this humanality, like this human side that you give these dragons, and I love it. It's cozy. Even if it's like a fight scene and you're describing, something maybe violent, I can just see the human side that you've given these dragons. What kind of gave you that inspiration?
Well, it's kind of, I think, I don't even know what age I was. My mom got me this book called The Big Book of Dragons. And it was this big blue book with a massive green dragon on the front. And I kind of just fell in love with them from there. Oh. And I think I really sided with the way George R. R. Martin wrote his dragons, in that I don't particularly love the talking dragons. It kind of always brings me a little bit to a whole different type of stuff. I prefer the dragons that are beasts, like dragons that are capable of massive destruction, and also having that kind of feral thing about them, but being incredibly intelligent. And I think for me, a lot of it came from, if you've ever seen a very, very smart dog. I had a border collie that was essentially a genius, and like crazy smart. And you could see it in her eyes. So you can tell that this dog knows what you're saying. They know what you're feeling. They know what you're going to do. And I kind of just taken that and bumping it up 100 levels. And it was kind of what I wanted. I wanted the dragons to be a character without feeling like a caricature, so that the dragons are there and they're not going to speak in English, but they know what you're doing, what you're feeling.
So I actually repeated that line to my wife. I've seen it many times within your, like, I don't know, Twitter or something, that you say that dragons are just big dogs. And when you think in those terms, it's kind of like, okay, I think I like dragons now.
They are big, savage dogs that can rip you apart and set you on fire.
There is the extra part he put there is probably the realistic part. If they,
that's the part that gets them dangerous.
So something that I think is probably maybe your most beautiful cover yet, just because I have a fascination with, like, the purple of Empires and Dust. How's that coming along?
It's getting there. It's a funny one, because as I've moved on in the career and as I've written more, my expectations for what I'm going to do get higher. I think that's its nature, and it's part of the problem with authors and what we call imposter syndrome, is as you write, your standards get higher. And then because your standards are higher, everything you write feels like it was worse than the previous thing.
Wow.
But also I have higher expectations for how much I can write without really setting natural limitations on myself. So I had set a target that I wanted to hit 100,000 words this month and next month, because I've had no time this year, because I went away, I got married, we were away for 6 weeks, and I did like 4 weeks on a tour in the US and the UK. My family are coming over for another month at the end of the year. So I've essentially lost about 4 months of writing this year. So I'm trying to gain it back.
That's a lot.
And I've done 100,000 words in a month before. But the problem is, when you start a book, at least for this one, for like the 4th book in the series, you'll understand when you get to A War and Ruin, but there is so much to remember. And it's not just names, it's not just places and titles, it's every conversation that every character ever had.
Please don't spoil it.
Which character, but that's it. So every conversation they've ever had, which characters they've had it with, the emotional position of every single character in the book at that time. And so it takes a lot longer to start the books. And so... Sorry?
How do you remember all that, though? Like, do you like have generalized notes in which you can reference back to, or are you just like pure recollection?
It's kind of 50-50 in my head, and then 50-50 on a note software I have. But then I also have, like, it's not well organized. So it's something that I need to organize properly, because it'll make my life a lot easier.
Okay.
But so what it means is, although this month has been the biggest opening month of writing I've ever had for a book. So I've just started writing. I've hit a higher word count this month than I did when I was starting any of my other books, but it was well below the target that I set.
Oh, wow.
Because I've, started writing more, and I've been writing for the last 2.5 years. And so now I expect more of myself, but I didn't really factor in the fact that it was going to be, the first month I was writing this book, which always takes longer. So it's going well, but slower than I would like.
I love that. A couple things I love real quick. Joshua says he agrees. Book 4 looks insane. It does. It looks awesome. Awesome cover. Very striking. It pulls you in. So one thing that I love about what you just said is you set higher expectations for yourself. And I think maybe that setting that expectation, not crazy high, because unrealistic is never the goal, but high enough to where you really are reaching for that number. And even if you fall just a little bit short of it, you've done well above what you've done in the past. That's a hard balance to keep.
It's very hard, and it's very hard. It can be very hard in your mental health. And I think it really just depends on, we like to give like really blanket writing advice, and people like to rally against writing advice in real blanket ways. So people will say, you'll see people get up in arms on Twitter. When someone says you should write every day, half of Twitter goes crazy being like, I'm so offended. How dare someone say I should write every day? I have, and they'll list a reason why they can't. And I go, look, that's totally fine. But just because advice isn't applicable to every person doesn't mean it's not great advice.
Absolutely.
So for me, writing every day is really important. Even if it's only 50 words or 100 words, anything, it just keeps my brain in that frame of mind, and it keeps me going. And I think the comparison I used when talking to someone a while ago was, you would be called a lunatic if you ever told Kobe Bryant to stop practicing.
Oh my gosh.
Don't train every day, Kobe. It's bad.
He did too.
That would never, but it would never happen. But the reality is almost everything, every sport, everything is dominated by people who are consistent. And, you get better the more you do something. So it stands to reason that the more you write, the quicker you'll improve. And for me, I really like writing every day. But it has been an up and down battle of trying to find what I can healthily keep as a steady state of writing. So there'll be points where I'll set my targets way too high, and then I'll get really down on myself because I'm missing them. And then 2 weeks later, I go, wait, hold on. That was a really unrealistic target to hit. Like, you can hit that word count, but not every day all year. That's not possible. And so it takes a while to dial it in.
I love those points because balance is something I think as you've got a family now, you're a married man, you've got things that you do outside of writing, and finding balance in your life. I have 4 children. I couldn't begin to tell you what the balance of that is. I couldn't even touch on it. I'm still figuring that out. So having the ambition to try to find that knowledge, I think, is key. And then setting goals that, which is really hard, that are realistic, but still have you aiming.
It's finding a process that works for you as well. So I know when I was doing this at first, I was working 12-hour shifts, switch over day and night shifts. So 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. And I've said this before. So I was doing them where sometimes I would do 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. And then I would get home at like 8, and I would sleep till about 12. And say if I had my day off, I'd be good till the next day. And then I'd get up at 6, go to work at 7 a.m., come back at like 8 p.m. at night. I'd go to the gym and eat my food. And then at 9 or half 9, I'd write till 2 or 3 in the morning. And then I'd get up at 6.
Wow.
And I go back to work and rinse and repeat. And what I was finding was some of those days I was doing hours and making myself really tired. And I was only getting like 400, 500 words done.
Wow.
And I was looking up different methods, and I found a method called the Pomodoro method, which is essentially where you work in short bursts and you take time off. And that just burst my writing through the roof. And what it meant was, on days where I had no time, say you have 4 kids, say you have no time. I was managing to train myself that if I had 30 minutes, I could write 500 words. If I had prepped the chapter and I knew, not like sentence by sentence or even conversation by conversation, but just the general shit that was going to happen. These two have a conversation about this. This happens in general. Then when I went in, I could write 500 words, and then maybe later on that day, I could steal another half an hour. And then I write another 500 words. And all of a sudden, I have 1,000 words. And it doesn't work all the time. And like nothing does. But it really, really helped me.
Oh, man. One thing that I've heard repeated many times, so that kind of, as somebody who aspires to write and be successful at it, I pay attention to those things, and it's that method. Now, I know there's multiple variations. You kind of find the times that you work. Like I've heard like 45 minutes, 20 minutes, or 30 minutes, 30 minutes, 10 minutes, or 5 minutes. But nonetheless, it sounds like a pretty productive like system.
I've found it to be anyway. And there's been times where I've kind of dipped into it, dipped out of it, and kind of it didn't work for me. And I think the thing for me has just been, I don't know, just making myself do it. Like, and I've gone through points where it's fucking tough as shit, points where I feel like crap, and I'm like, I still need to get this words done. It's my job.
That's awesome.
You know, and I think that's the difference, because now it is my job in that, like, I need to treat it like a job. Although it's a passion, it's a hobby, it's something I love. This is a job. This is what pays my bills, and I need to get my shit done. So
that's amazing advice. Thank you for sharing that, because you know, that's a personal process. That's a lot of struggling that you're talking about, and that's not always easy to talk about. So thank you. I think you'll give a lot of insight to people who you could be helping somebody right now that's on the edge of producing anything, a book, music, whatever you're into. So I think that's really important.
I think the thing for me, and the thing about, sorry, garbage truck drove by. I think the thing about writing every day, that people forget, and it could be 10 words, just 10. Just give yourself a half an hour. And the key thing is understanding that it's not a religion. If you miss a day, it's okay. If you miss 3 days, it's okay. If you miss a week, it's totally fine. It's not a religion. It's not something where you sit there and you go, I'm a horrible person if I don't write every day. But it's about building a habit and understanding that even if you're having a shit 2 weeks, if you wrote every day for that shit 2 weeks and you got 100 words a day, you know, you're sitting there on 1,400 words that wouldn't have been written. And even though you had a shit time, you still got something from it. Whereas other times you'll still have a shit time and you'll have no words written. And 1,400 words written on top of the next 1,000 words you write, on top of the next 1,000 words you write, means you will eventually finish your book. But if you don't, you won't.
That is plain and simple, in your face, just pure facts. And I think a lot of us could try to cut around and make a fancy system out of what you just said. And it's not that. It's do it and it'll be there, or not do it and it won't. It's just doing it and finding your process to how to do it.
I think sometimes there's a thing, I've talked to Mike from Mike's Book Reviews about this as well, and there's a thing in culture at the minute where we really don't like someone telling us that we need to work hard, with the normal defense being I'm already working hard. And I think there are a lot of people who are working hard, and the solution isn't just to work harder. No, obviously not. But I also think a lot of the times, I know I'm guilty of it, a lot of the times I'm guilty of convincing myself I'm working hard, whereas the reality is I'm kind of occupying headspace with the thing I'm meant to be doing, but I'm not actually doing it. And that was a big difference for me, is kind of understanding, hey, I'm actually not working as hard as I can be on this, but I'm still suffering for it. I'm suffering as though I gave that amount of time. And I think I've said this a lot, about like when I started, there's two things that I told myself, and it's not a joke. This is what I said to myself when I started, and when I decided that I didn't want to query for trad, was that there was two reasons that I wasn't going to fail. I could fail for 100 reasons, but I refused to fail because I didn't work hard enough, or because somebody else let me down. So I didn't want to go the trad route because I wanted to be in charge of my own success. I didn't want somebody else to be able to tell me, no, you're not going to do it. And then I just kind of refused. Yeah, I was like, I can fail because I'm shit, but I'm not going to fail because I didn't work hard enough.
Will you repeat those two things? Because you didn't work hard enough, and what was the second?
Brain didn't work there. Yeah, because I didn't work hard enough, and because somebody else let me down, or somebody else told me I wasn't going to succeed. So I didn't want somebody else to be in control of basically be in control of my future.
Yes, that's you taking ownership of your life.
That was it for me. And I think this is one of those positions where with writing, it's one of the few things where you can do that. So if you're going for like a big job and a big play, a big, like, I don't know, PwC or one of the big firms, you don't really just have the option to just take control of it. Someone can tell you no. And a lot of jobs don't have that luxury. But with a job like writing and a job that is in a creative field, you do have that luxury to be able to take control of your own path. There will always be obstacles, and there's always going to be things that can supersede that and beat you down. But you're not going to, for me, it was like, I'm not failing because of that. All right. I'm not going to fail because somebody else told me that I'm not going to succeed.
So I know a couple people in the chats are loving that, but I can't really tell you how incredible. Yeah, my words exactly. So fucking inspiring. You just pretty much excluded any excuse that we usually give ourselves as humans, because we like to do that. This exterior reason is the fact that I didn't, this or that. You kind of rid yourself of that possibility, which gives you.
But don't get me wrong. There are external factors that affect people, and there's stuff that's going to get in your way. 100%. That's going to happen. That's life. It isn't a simple case of, hey, I'm going to say I'm going to do it, and I'm going to do it. Like, it's going to be fucking tough.
But it's striving for that, right?
Yeah. But it's like I put it on Twitter today. I missed my targets for this month, and I think where I am now is so different to where I was 2 years ago and a year ago, with like how I dealt with my stress and how I dealt with this kind of like overwhelmed feeling. And so I missed my targets because I sat here and I just couldn't write, and I was getting anxiety at the thought of writing. And I kind of just sat down, and I'm really lucky that I have an amazing wife, and she just messaged me and she was like, hey, this morning, get up and work on your emails, because
awesome.
then you're getting something done. It might not be writing, but your emails will keep building up, and that will put more anxiety on you.
Ooh.
Do something that requires no creative thought. All right, go do your emails. And so I did my emails, and I kind of sat there and I said, okay, yesterday was shit. The day before was shit. I take that. It was shit.
Mm-hmm.
But that's no reason for today to be shit.
Ooh.
And it's kind of like, it just kind of stops that spiral. Where I'm kind of going, look, yesterday's yesterday. It's done now. It was crap. Like, I didn't do what I meant to do. I got overwhelmed. Stuff got on top of me, but that's not happening today.
But still going to hold myself accountable. I think accountability is a wonderful thing. A realistic goals, and keeping yourself in check, kind of like realistic goals. I'm going to probably play this review or interview over and over more times than any other, because you've given really good advice. It's very insightful. I know I've said it, but thank you. It's really valuable. Let's see. Ryan needs to put on an army uniform and deliver the speech in front of a huge flag.
Man, that is one of the most American things I have ever heard.
It is. That's wonderful.
Advice can only be given in front of the Star-Spangled Banner.
Josh, I noticed you asked this earlier. I'm sorry that I didn't get to it. I will get to it now. Josh says, Ryan, are you still accepting beta readers, or have those positions been filled?
At the minute, they are filled, because I have a team of about 20 beta readers, which is a lot more than most people have. But it's just something that I really love. But when it gets bigger than that, it gets kind of unmanageable.
And that's realistic. Yeah, it is. 20 different feedbacks. It's a lot of different points that are going to be brought up, and I can definitely understand that. Montague, America. Man, it's like sometimes. Anyway, I won't go down that rabbit hole.
Man, every time someone says that, I think back to the theme song from Team America World Police.
Yes,
America, fuck yeah.
Fuck yeah.
Oh man, that defined an entire generation's opinion of America. Like every single person I knew all across Europe, all across the UK, all across Australia was just America. Fuck
Durka.
Yeah.
It's like, come on. I think I was probably, gosh, I don't know, maybe 7th, 8th, 9th grade, something like that.
I don't even know what those grades mean to ages.
Yeah. So what do you consider? I don't even know how to even phrase this question. What is your school process as far as going up?
So we had like 4 years. No, I was 4 when I started junior infants, and we'd have 6 years of that. Would we have 6 years of that? No, I'm wrong. Yeah, no, we'd have 8 years. Yeah. So I'd be 12 by the time I went into secondary school, and then we'd have 6 years of that.
Very different process.
Yeah, I don't know.
We would have something. we would go from like preschool to kindergarten to elementary school to middle school to high school to college.
There's so many different brackets.
Yeah, it sounds like.
And you can go to prep schools, and you can go to like all these other things.
Yeah, there's public schools, private schools, and
And I'm pretty sure 1 year of university in America would pay for my entire education from when I was born to when I was like 22.
America, I understand some of the reasons that people don't like America. It makes lots of sense. But not saying I don't love my country, I do. But there's certain things like, I don't know how you can ask somebody that's 17, 18, 19 to spend $60,000 for 1 year of college.
Man, my university was $1,500 a year.
Wow, that sounds humane.
But they're all the same.
Oh,
so
wow!
None of them were. Yeah, it's all the same. That's what it costs to go to university.
Structured. That sounds better than. I mean, I don't know. I don't really have. I've got an opinion on it. I mean,
no. There's one general thing. This could be its own topic that we go off on for 12 years. But there's one general thing that I don't think can be disputed is the cost of what we would consider the fundamental things for existing is just ridiculous in America. Like medical, anything to do with medicine, anything to do with education. The two things that I would kind of deem the most important.
I have to agree with you. I 100% agree with you. There's so much.
If you like, even over here, if you and your partner say you struggle to have kids, okay, and you have, say your partner has a low egg count or you have an infertility problem,
sure.
If you have that and it's diagnosed, the state will pay for IVF.
That sounds absolutely understandable.
If an American comes over here on holiday on a bike, falls off their bike and breaks their leg, it's all covered. All of your hospital, all of your surgery, not even the people who live here, but people who are just visiting too. Like everything covered. No matter what. And if I'm sick, all the prescriptions are free. Wow. And then if I go to a doctor, it's about, I don't know, like $10, $12.
I think that America has a lot to learn from other countries. That is, like you said, it could be a whole nother 10-hour conversation.
Yeah, 100%.
But either way, I agree with what you're saying. I think that's wonderful. And I'm glad that you have access to such wonderful things. What were some unexpected, unexpected aspects of having a successful series? Like, what is something you've gone through that you're like, that was different than I thought? I
think definitely, but there's a lot. One of the ones is just the stress. A lot of people, the key piece of advice that I give every single time is if you're about to start and if you are thinking of launching a book, the one piece of advice that's universal is wait. If it's a day or if it's 2 days or if it's a month or if it's 2 months, but wait and take your time. Make sure that what you're doing is what you want and make sure that you've given yourself the best chance to succeed, because once the snowballs let go and it rolls down the hill, it only gets bigger and it only goes faster. So if you succeed, or whatever succeeding is, if your book is doing really well, then you'll be under the stress of expectation, the stress of release, the stress of turnover, the stress of continued quality of output. If your book fails by whatever definition you deem to be failing, now you're trying to scramble to catch up with a dying dream. You're trying to find a way to level yourself and bring yourself back. And the more prepared you are, the easier it is on that other end. And I think a lot of people are so eager to get the book out that they rush through so many things that if they'd given themselves a few more months to prepare, would have been a lot easier. And like a lot of people will kind of come to me and ask me different things 6 or 7 months after they've launched. And the reality is a lot of advice isn't anywhere near as effective
after
later. So there's people who might discount their book to 99 cents 8 months after it launched. But although that will sell you some books, Amazon has already built like an identity of what that book is. So that's kind of how people talk about like the Amazon algorithm, and they talk about it like it's magic, but it's not. It's completely logic based. It's the biggest, most technologically advanced storefront in the world. Like it has to be logic based.
And if you don't believe it, just look at the extreme amount of success. And I mean, everybody orders. I mean, everybody's got Prime boxes at their doors. I mean, the guy, whatever they've done as far as what you're talking about, the algorithm, they know what they're doing.
Yeah. 100%. And it's one of the things that people don't really take into account is conversion rates, which is the most important metric that any page can ever have, that people don't really see. And it's one of the reasons why a lot of the time you're advised when you launch a book, ask your family to not go near it. Ask them to not go on the page. Amazon will track 2 really important things. They will track how many people see your book versus how many people buy your book. And if it's a general, which is the most obvious metric in the world, because Amazon are about making money. So if you think about it, say Amazon have 100,000 people, okay, and they can send them to your book or they can send them to my book. And say if they go to my book, and for every 100 people they send to me, 50 people buy the book. And if they send 100 people to you, 5 people buy the book. Amazon's algorithm would be stupid to send them to your book, because Amazon will earn 10 times the profit off my book.
Wow, yes.
So that's what they'll do. So making sure your conversion rate is high, it's not transparent, you can't see it, but it's about making sure that the people you're sending to your page and that you're targeting are people who want to buy your book. And it's why sometimes just that whole broad approach a lot of authors take when they come in is like, follow for a follow on Twitter and, just sending huge amounts of traffic from anywhere to your page can actually be detrimental down the line.
Yeah, because if you get my wife brings this point up all the time. It's like, okay, say you're a YouTube page that has 1 million subscribers, but those people do absolutely nothing as in like interaction. They don't comment, they don't like, they don't share your stuff. It's like, how influential can that be?
It's quality of engagement. And it's like, I used to see a lot of people on Twitter who just be like, Twitter's useless and it's crap and it doesn't work. And you go on their page and you realize that they have 70,000 followers, but they're also following 70,000 people. And I don't mean look at it from the way of like, oh, you can't have the same ratio. It's more from the fact that what you can derive from that. You can go, okay, you clearly just followed anyone who followed you back, which means the people on your page don't actually care about your content. They don't give a shit. Wow. So it's much easier to build slower. I would rather have 7,000 people on my Twitter who are my readers.
Yeah.
Than 20,000 people who are other authors who only followed you to get a follow off you to bring a number up, but don't engage. And you can tell straight away because you have someone with 70,000 followers and they get 2 likes every time they tweet.
I've seen such
people
things.
Following them, they don't give a shit. They're not their followers.
So I had always wondered why that occurs, and now I know. Like the conversion rate is another question I've had in my head. I now know that, and that's based off your experience.
It's not just Twitter. It's everything. It's like my mailing list. I've taken probably 4,000 or 5,000 people off my mailing list. And now I've just over 11,000 people on it. But the difference is now I have 11,000 people with an open rate of like 64, 65%, which is massive, especially for a list that large. And it's because at the start, I was kind of doing what most people do and just trying to build the list. And I was, getting anyone in, giving out loads of different freebies. And a lot of the people just came for the free book and didn't actually care about what I was saying. So as I slowly built it more organically, and those people started coming from the back of the book, because I have my links at the back of the book, and they start joining my mailing list, it's my actual readers. Now my
That's
list is full of
strategy.
my readers.
That's
It
strategy,
seems so
folks.
straightforward. It seems
does.
so simple. The people
Once
you
it's
want on
thought
your
of, it
mailing list
does.
should be the people who like your books.
It's like, so when somebody finishes my books, that's when I'll introduce them to my social links, because then they're fans. Come on, get out of here with that. Come on. That's just too straightforward, but brilliant at the exact same time. It makes so much sense, but I would have never thought of it. Ed, wow, sorry, EC Greaves. Sorry, Ed. We're on first name. Be right back and following all you weirdos on Twitter. He's taking your advice very heavily to the heart.
I don't know if that's what I said.
So let's see here. Yeah, he's just, sorry. Sometimes I lose myself in the context over in the chat. I'm very good at confusing myself, by the way. Sometimes
Don't worry, I'm right there with you.
Like, I'll put like comments up and I'm like, what the hell is going on with this? Like, so I'll just go on to my next question. SPFBO 9, are you a fan of the contest? Do you pay attention to it? That, like, read any of the authors, or you're just writing right now?
I have no idea who is in the final at all, except for JDL Rossell. I always get his surname wrong. He's a good friend of mine, but I always get his surname wrong. I know he's in the final. But in general, I think I kind of stopped. This is probably controversial, but I kind of stopped following SPFBO after last year, or was it the year before? I can't remember. But basically, I just saw a couple of the reviews where one or two, most of the viewers are amazing. Most of the blogs are amazing. But there was one or two where I just accidentally locked my computer screen, where the reviews were really horrible, like quite mean. And
wow,
I think a couple of people pointed it out, and then they were kind of attacked. And I don't know. And there was a couple of reviews where basically there was one particular reviewer, I'm not going to name, who was basically shitting on self-publishing in the review. Wow. And I don't know, it just the kind of spirit of what I thought the competition was just kind of faded in my head, and I kind of just stopped. And if people love it and are having a great time, that's amazing. And I still think it's a great competition, but just for me, it then lost a bit of that magic in my head as I was seeing that.
No, I definitely understand that. So I'm 33 next month. Next month. November 14th, I'll turn 33. I discovered fantasy.
33 with 4 kids. I am 31 with no kids.
Well, we all have those like different, journeys.
I was talking to Dave from Fanfi Addict, who was like the founder of Fanfi Addict.
Yeah.
And Dave
I just had him on.
Yeah, and we were joking because he had said that my wedding day, which was just in June, is the same anniversary as him. And I was like, oh man, Americans get married so fucking early. And he was like, oh, and actually, we didn't get married that early. We got married at 26 or whatever it was. And I was like, Dave, at 26, I was running beer pong tournaments in a bar in Bolivia. That is a different life. That is a totally different life.
So the only thing I really have to say from that is congratulations.
Oh, thank you.
It's like, I think part of being an individual is having someone as a companion that helps us be a better one, right? And I think, just from my personal experience, like you said, you don't know how many, I interview so many people. I couldn't by myself. I would probably be too self-critical, but you have that support system that is not always like hard or easy to find, and sometimes you just end up lucking out, and it's nice to have that support system, whether it's your spouse or whatever your individual support system may be. It's really refreshing.
As you're saying, like, perfectly astute comments, I'm reading in the comments section, like, oh yeah, I got married at 21. I got married at 19. I got married at 21, 23. I'm like, 21? I was still getting drunk in university at 21. How
do you think that's a cultural thing?
Oh no, it's cultural. Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, like all of my friends back home would only be getting married like now or like in the last year. You know, it's one of those, I don't know, like loads of my American friends all got married so young, like early 20s, and some teenage in that example. And it's such a massively cultural difference.
Well, if you look up statistics, America's divorce rate is very high. It's
Well, think
over
of it
half.
this way. I can't think of a single good decision I made in my teenage years.
Ooh,
And honestly,
I can
most of them
relate.
in my early 20s were probably wrong too.
Yeah. Oh, I know mine were. I wasn't until
Yeah.
about, well, I'm 33 this year, about 31. I started making clear decisions. And so I'm happy I had kids. Well, in America, I can say that I had kids a little bit later than most. What is the typical age range where you're from to have children? About my age? 33?
No,
32?
I'm probably a little bit late. I'd say probably like late 20s and
Okay.
then maybe late 20s to early 30s at the minute. I think in Ireland about 20 years ago, it was different. But I think the culture has shifted, especially as, you start seeing a lot more equal rights and a lot more kind of, just far more normal rights for women, and especially women being encouraged to be in the workplace and actually have careers that they should have been encouraged to have decades ago.
Yeah.
And then naturally, some of the other stuff's put on hold because you have two partners in a relationship who are both striving for their own personal goals, and then sometimes it takes a bit longer.
That makes perfect sense to me.
Yeah.
So real quick, what was one major influence that you saw? You've probably already answered it, but was there so maybe like the one that tipped the hat, if you will? Was it an author, a relative, an experience that said, I'm starting writing tomorrow?
No, that's what I said earlier. So it was literally just, I was in that job and then just said, fuck it, I have too much spare time. I'm going to write.
Well, then I apologize for the same kind of reiteration of it.
No stress.
So name one person that you'd like me to interview in the future.
John
This has
Gwynne.
become, oh man, you bet. I hope one day I can talk to
John Gwynne.
He's the reason so a real quick story, and I wanted to share this with you before we got off. The reason I'm here with you today is because I watched you on Mike's book reviews. I said I won't start a YouTube channel unless I can take myself seriously. And those I took seriously already in the BookTube community, doing what I wanted to do, were interviewing authors. And it was yours particularly with Mike's book.
That was reviews. A long interview as well. We talked for a while.
I loved every freaking minute of it.
We talked,
and that's the reason we are talking right now. And it's just, to me, later I'm just going to be like, it'll hit me that like we're here right now, because sometimes, I don't know, it seems unreal. I just want to thank you for being here with me, because you are the reason I'm here.
Dad, I need you to know that as an Irish person, when someone says something nice, my brain just freezes. But thank you for having me on. Like I love doing this sort of stuff. I think as well, writing is such a kind of like an isolating field. That being able to talk to people with these kind of interests and about books is really, really nice. I just don't always have the time to do it. But I love when I get to do it.
Well, no, it makes perfect sense. I mean, with gaining success and time that you're doing those things that require, you're doing your job. It's like, as you said, and it's more serious now than it's been. That's just a part of what it is. So I just appreciate you spending some time with me. Let me borrow your brain for a little bit and picking at it. So I always like to give at the very end, is there anything you'd like to shout out about that's coming up? Literally anything. It's kind of like my chance for somebody to give a highlight to something that I may not have thought of.
Well, Dalton, the only thing now is I do have a new short story that's going to be released as part of like a winter anthology this year. It's called The Blood That Burns the Winter Snow, and the anthology is The Advent of Winter. And the Kickstarter is up right now. I think it's way overfunded at the minute.
It is.
And it's a really, really cool concept that Dom came to me quite a while ago, asking me if I'd like to be involved. And as soon as he said it, I was like, Dom, that's such a cool idea. The idea of replacing a chocolate advent calendar with stories.
Isn't his accent just like the standard for what's like? He makes everything sound so
quintessential British.
Oh, it's beautiful. Like everything in my life, if you can explain it to me with your voice, we're good.
Yeah.
So that's all.
Speaking and drinking a cup of tea at the same time.
Yeah. So I talked to Zach Argyle a couple weeks ago on the channel. Got his rendition of the story he's telling. I can't wait to see I've backed. That's my second Kickstarter I've backed. The first was Rob J. Hayes.
Oh, Rob's cool. I like Rob.
Yeah, he'll be on in a couple weeks. I can't wait to talk his head off about the God Eater trilogy he's going to be coming out with.
It's such a crazy concept. Only someone like Rob could come up with that.
I had never heard of
and
such a thing.
I think only someone like Rob could pull it off too, because it's just insane. My brain would
3 and 3 like concurrently, and it's like I don't doubt that he can pull it off at all. It's just something that was so interestingly different.
What interests me is when they're all released, will people still read them 1, 1, 1, 2, 2, 2, 3, 3, 3, or will they read 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3? Well, because it's kind of like if you release something, and remember, I was talking about the publication order. So the publication order is generally the order in which the author intends for the series to be read, and usually you write them that way so that the reveals and all the secrets get unraveled at a set pace. But if he releases it that way as 1, 1, 1, or 1, 1, 1, 2, 2, 2, 3, 3, 3, but then once it's all done, people start reading trilogy by trilogy, will it be different?
That brings me back to one of the first points he makes in like the spiel he gives before you see the Kickstarter, is that it is a very ambitious project. Oh, yeah. I believe it sounds ambitious. Well, man, I have just enjoyed the heck out of this. I appreciate you. I thank you so much for letting me borrow your brain to pick at it a little bit.
No, 100%.
I look forward to speaking with you again in the future. And for those that showed up, I hope you had just as much fun as I did learning, the knowledge and experience that Ryan has.
It's mostly just me talking shit to a camera, but yeah.
Well, what it is though, it's inspiring nonetheless. So thank you. And thanks for y'all stopping by. And for those who will see it in the future, and we'll see you later.
Thank you very much.